Welcome back to First Light, where we dive deep into inspiring stories of leaders, visionaries, and innovators who are making a meaningful impact. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Paul Mass, President and founder of Clearview Financial Solutions. Paul's journey in financial services began in 1997, and over the years, he has built a reputation for guiding executives, business owners, and families through complex financial landscape. Let's get ready to learn from Paul's insights on building a successful financial practice, the importance of client-centered advice, and his own transformative career journey. All right. Hey, Paul, I want to welcome you to First Light, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on First Light today to share your story and also to talk to us about the financial aspect of the Power Five. You know, the one thing I've talked to my listeners a lot about is your Power Five, your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and finally your financial well-being and how important that is to us. So for those who may not know you, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me on the Zoom. As you know, I'm in New York. We started our business 28 years ago, and we serve people all over the country. People who are smart, looking to learn, want to be coached, and most of all, I think, and this kind of goes to your story, which is they love themselves and they love their families, right? And that's critical in the work that we do, is that we are love-based leaders, and we like to work with people who love their family and enjoy being around them. So, as far as sharing what we do here at Clearview, I started Clearview Financial Solutions, and in this business 28 years ago. And now have the privilege and pleasure, having a dream come true for me is to work with my son in my practice, which is really awesome. At Clearview, we offer a full service platform that caters to people who are looking for financial leadership, and also a person who is leading with a fiduciary mindset to help them on basically a journey to understand where they are, where they want to go, and how to get there, and the tools at the end of it, the tools that will help them. But, Sean, I think you asked me to share with you my journey, which I think is interesting, which kind of ties into your story, which you were kind of very, open to share with me, which I kind of love. So, many, many moons ago, I decided to follow my dad's footsteps for a very few minutes, because you grow up and you listen to stories at the kitchen table, and I guess no different than my son listening to me and admiring me. I took a kind of a pinky toe into the water, but some of my family, friends, and also relatives were in this financial advisory business. But talking about, wellness and mental wellness and health. My dad was very fear-based, right? And he was stuck in a career and later in a business that he couldn't get out of. And by the way, what he did doesn't even exist anymore today, which is even not funny, but ironic. With that being said, I decided to take my journey alone. I met my wife, and my wife always knew that I would be good at this business. I tried it here and there, and just how luck would have it, my wife was a school teacher, and I went to one of her plays, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you." And as an arrogant young man, I said, "I don't need to talk to you. I'm a hustler. I'm doing well, blah, blah, blah." And after that, thank God, my wife got into the car with me and said, "You must talk to this person." And everything that my dad thought about the career that I'm in was absolutely the opposite of what I saw when I went to go visit this company. So without, and I think, Chris, you can, kind of relate to this, without a lot of support in my life, to enter into this career, I put my 2 feet down and relied on a few people that really believed in me and just said, "I'm going to do this," right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. not an accountant. I wasn't a CPA, even though I went to school for accounting. And I knew that I wanted to help people, but I also wanted to be around people. And because I love being around people. So taking the science of understanding how finance works, but also connecting that to a love-based approach was very important to me. And, I just put my head down and grinded every day to build something that was not necessarily bigger than me, but something that represented me, my core values, and that I can share with other people. On this journey is where I am right now is, at a certain point in my career, 28 years, now wanting to get back to my son. And, maybe I have another good 10-year run in me where I can really create something different and then hand it off and watch it grow from there.
Let's talk about how special that is because my dad's an attorney. I like you said, I watched my dad go to court, and I went to his law firm as a kid, and so I always was around it. And so of course, I ended up being an attorney, but unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to practice with my dad in the sense of the day to day of the business. I did fortunately get to handle some cases with him, which was really cool and a great experience. But talk about how now having your son as a part of your business and being to work with him on a daily basis, what that means to you to know that you've built this amazing company and now he gets to kind of be a part of it with you.
Yeah. I think that understanding what you did and relating it to my son, it's obviously not easy to be in a business with your family member, right? I am the father, right? He is the son. And to, watch my son on his journey in life, we're great friends. We love the same things. We love the same comedy. We love the same sports. And then translating that into a business relationship after kind of mentoring him through elementary school, high school, college, and help steering him as a father. I will tell you, just as a quick setback, my dad was more of a fear-based leader, right? And as a father. And I think myself, I tried not to do that. Right. We always try, Chris, to improve one level more than what our parents did for us. And my dad did great things for me, but it just, that's how he led. And I didn't want to do that. So I let my son have a little bit more of a longer tether, if you may, to experience life and experiment. But now when I decided when he was in college and getting ready to figure out, he went to the University of Florida, figuring out, as a graduating Gator, what he would do, I turned to him and said, listen, this is not a demand. This is an opportunity. I am not going to work forever. I have an opportunity to either sell my practice or have you come in and, mentor you into what I feel would be a great career for you. He thought about it, came back to me, said, yes, I am. Now, the funny thing is, and I will explain this in the journey, that, as a child coming in who had his own, willingness and own drive to be successful, being in a family business is something that, he has pride in, but also doesn't want people to think that he was given something. On my end, and probably something that maybe or maybe not you can relate to, is how do I transition being a father to a business leader and a boss, right? And I will share with you, Chris, that it was a very special moment in my life because I had to really not teach him what I knew, but what I know to be in the future and what's best, which is really hard to do because as I was trained and brought up in this business, just like my dad's old business doesn't even exist anymore, the way I've done business doesn't mean that's the way we're going to do business. So I had to unlearn some traits and qualities that I had to be a better leader for him, but also kind of go from the mold of being a father to a coach and a mentor. And what I said to myself when he actually said yes was to actually get into the mindset of thinking, this young man is not my son anymore. Now he's my partner. How do I treat him as a young man or a young adult who is learning to be in business and not react to him as a father. And that's been a journey. And I can tell you, we are 2 years into this relationship, and we have a staff. We communicate perfectly. We work to drive business. He's open. I'm open to his criticism. He's open to mine. And together we're moving forward and building. And it's very odd, but I do believe that it came from my maturity or my willingness to mature as a human being to be able to manipulate, or not manipulate, but to operate in this space and not have the challenges of a father-son relationship in a business setting. And I will tell you that there's been times where we've disagreed, but we learn from our mistakes. So, we were in a staff meeting and, I put my foot down about something, and I didn't get aggressive, but he knew I was upset. And we talked offline and said, you know what, this is not the dynamic we want to have in our business. And, as leaders, we don't want our staff to see that. So how about this? We have a buzzword now. Take it offline. Let's talk offline. And we know to call a timeout and then to kind of go offline. He doesn't call me dad anymore. He calls me Paul, which is really difficult for me because there are times where we're not at work and he still calls me Paul. And every once in a while, I'll tap him on the back and say, it's okay to call me dad every once in a while.
That's got to be a cool dynamic. And so, you've been in this industry for a long time. Let's talk about some of your early struggles. I'm sure you've had some struggles along the way. There's been some financial crises along the way and different things that you've had to kind of navigate and deal with. So talk about some of those early challenges in your career and how you kind of overcame those challenges.
Yeah. So my career took many different journeys. Doing this for 28 years, I've experienced a couple of things: Russian crisis, oil crisis, the credit crisis, obviously we all remember. And now this current, what we wouldn't consider a crisis, but COVID was a crisis. And, the inflation that we're experiencing right now is a crisis. I can tell for a while, Chris, I had a partner in business, and we split up and went our own ways. I can remember a time, and it was a very dark time during the credit crisis, where we saw things that we would never see before. People who relied on their corporations for health insurance and retirement. And not only that, we've dealt with a lot of people on Wall Street who were very much tied to their net worth, tied to stock options or restricted stock, to watch wealth go from, millions to zero, basically, and then to lose your job on top of that. I related this to a time where in one kind of breath, I turned and to my partner and said, we have roller skates on. What we thought was in one direction was our business may now actually have to pivot to another direction. So it's the ability to adapt and realize that, maybe I might not be profitable today, but by, mentoring my clients, holding them accountable, teaching them, taking them under my wing, and also looking for different business opportunities while I'm doing it, was meaningful. Now we survived that. No different than, I would say, COVID was a challenge for many businesses. Some businesses, unfortunately, went under because they couldn't adapt, because it was physically impossible to adapt. The restaurant business probably was one of the most impacted, right? People go out socially. But there were restaurants that figured out how to create an outbound, right? To take their servers, to employ their servers to be delivery people, right? And whereas they were fairly getting by or didn't get by, they stuck around and figured out a way to even just stick around to survive the crisis. I would say the crisis in our practice during COVID was the fact that we were front-facing folks. I would have people in my office on a continual basis. And I felt the only way that I can do business with my clients was to have them in front of me in person, whether it's in their offices or in my offices, where you can see people, you can see their reaction, you can see things in their office, you understand them, you felt like you couldn't connect with someone without shaking their hands. But when COVID hit, just like when the financial crisis hit and everything else hit, I said to myself, it's either time to either make excuses and die or to figure out a way to succeed and grow. And whereas some advisors were crippled during the crisis because they couldn't adapt to this type of work, what I felt right away was, well, how do I utilize this great opportunity we have of video to actually look into someone's eyes, even though I'm not looking into your eyes, but while I'm on video, I can see you. I can see how you're reacting. And by the way, I'm a nice person. You're a nice person. We can be friends. Uh, I can tell you one of the funniest stories that came out of this. I happened to be at a party, and Chris, it's a party that you know. And I'm sitting there, and there's a number of clients that are at this party with me. And I see this gentleman walk in, and we make eye contact about 3 times. And finally, the person comes up to me and whispers in my ear and says, I know you. And I looked at him, I said, I know you too. I just can't tell from where. Then he whispers his name into my ear, and I whisper my name into his ear. But as I'm doing that, it clicked who the person was. I never met this person in person over a 2-year period. They're a very good client. And we realized that we knew each other and that this person was my client. I will tell you, Chris, I haven't given someone a longer hug than I gave this person. Now, the reason being is that I felt so emotionally connected to this person was because I made that emotional connection through video by understanding them, their values, what their goals were, who their children were, what struggles they dealt with. So you learn how to adapt. And hopefully I've answered the question right in different forms and different times, different time periods.
Yeah, well, I mean, with what you do as a financial planner and working with people's money, they have to trust you, right? There has to be that trust, and like you said, it's hard. How do I get that trust just over video when I'm going to hand over all my financials to this individual? And just like in law, as an attorney, most of the time we're representing people through a very challenging circumstance, and typically for me, it's when they've been injured and now they're going through all these medical care, and so it's a really difficult time for them. So same kind of thing, right? You used to meet every client in person, go to their house, meet them out, have them come to the office, whatever it was. And then through COVID, now it's all gone to video, and it's extremely challenging. But talk about gaining that trust, because when it comes to money, people are very cautious with their money. So talk about gaining trust and how important it is to have trust in business, especially in finances.
Yeah. So that's a really great question. And, something that I think is within you as an advisor, right? I think if you know who you are and you defined yourself as a trustworthy person and you're really a love-based leader, right? I'm not embarrassed to say that, but if you really believe that you are out there doing the greater good and you actually are really doing the greater good, that actually emits out of you as an advisor, right? So you don't have to try hard. People know that you are real. But I would say that the common advisor, right? There are a few types of advisors out there. There is execution advisors, people who sell you a commission-based product. There's also advisors who will, give you a fee-based product, but they all have an agenda, and that's to make money. So when I meet a client, being a love-based leader and someone who really, really just tells it as it is to a client, does what he says he's going to do, is I apologize to people I meet because most advisors don't know too much about their clients. An investment advisor is too busy staying on a line with you, telling you, well, you're outperforming the index or you're underperforming the index, and sequence of returns and alpha, extra alpha, and tax planning, all this other stuff. But they don't know the client. They don't know the client's sister. They don't know the client's children. They don't know what they're struggling with. They really don't care about any of their needs. Just to give you an example, and this has to be genuine, not genuine. I have a client who, unfortunately, his grandson was sick, and being the real person that I am, I care about him and his grandson, and just being there, just be emotional rock, to check in, to follow up, not about the returns, not about the financial plan, but about him as a human being and what he is dealing with. And not too many people do that. Like I said, they're focused on trying to push you forward, to get you to a certain place, whether it's to execute or to manage. But how I do it is from the middle of saying, okay, yeah, we might need all these things, but tell me about you. Tell me about what you know about money. What did you learn when you grew up and you were in elementary school or middle school? How did you see yourself? Were you middle class? Were you lower middle class? How did that make you feel? How do you adapt today to that? Because I will tell you, Chris, I did not grow up wealthy. I grew up in a middle class neighborhood, middle to upper class middle neighborhood. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I know what it felt like to not have. Right? I knew what it felt like not to go to certain luxuries that my friends were getting. I knew what it felt like to not have as many clothes or to not have furniture in my house. These were all the things that drove me as a human being, right, to achieve. Right. But in order to, so if you were my advisor, knowing that is very important, how to guide me. And knowing that about my clients helps me guide them. What's important to them? Is it, making sure that under challenging times today, that their children are going to be okay? Is it, do they, for whatever reason, don't care about the next area? So it's very important to know those, what I call emotional or psychographics, which kind of helps you guide your clients the way they want to be guided.
Well, let's talk about, you hit on a lot of important points, but let's talk about now that Power Five. I know you take care of yourself. I know you're an avid cyclist. And so I know you take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And obviously I know you take care of yourself financially, because you have to. But in speaking of that financial health, let's talk about how that financial health really does impact you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as well, if you're not doing it. So can you kind of talk about that?
Most definitely. I think that if you think about one of the biggest stressors in people's lives, it is money. You can say whatever you want about anything else. It's always money. What creates divorce, what creates illness, it's stress. And that stress is usually related to money. And, Chris, you will see that in life as you meet people. Today, unfortunately, with the invention of Amazon and everything else, right? Consuming is really easy. It becomes actually a very bad habit. And I just looking at the universe of people, and this is common. It's not a bad thing. It's just the more you earn, the more you spend. Not many people grow up not privileged, right? People do grow up privileged. And the European mentality, the people who have come over, the immigrant mentality, right? Of 50 years ago, growing up in an immigrant's house doesn't translate as much anymore, because what happened is the next generation said, well, we're not immigrants, right? Let's just, not share with our children money, and we just spend, right? And they learn the same habit. Growing up the way I did, watching my father stress about money constantly, I will say this with a very heavy heart. My mother turned to me on his deathbed and said, your dad was always worried about money and he never enjoyed it. And you know what? Unfortunately, Chris, when you pass away and you go to visit someone's gravesite, it has nothing to do with any awards you won. It has nothing to do with how much money you've left over. It just says loving husband, father, and grandfather. That is it. And my dad, in his wisdom, became successful when I was in high school and college. He accumulated money. My mother will have enough to live on, but he didn't enjoy any ounce of his success. And because of the stress and duress that he put himself under, he actually caused his own death, right? So if that's not the most extreme example, but I will tell you from, and Chris, I know this about you. You're very disciplined about things, about working out, and I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm a cyclist too, and trying to push myself to the next level of how can I improve? How can I lower my heart rate, improve my power, right? Do all those things. I know you can relate to that, you know, but that also relates to finance, right? Unfortunately, for some people, they don't have great role models for money. And to sit there and say, okay, save for the house first and then spend, right? And that's basically my philosophy. And maybe you have too much of my dad's philosophy, right? But a lot of people today have G Wagons, big houses, and have no money, right? But overextended on loans. Instead of living practically and saying, okay, for every dollar that I'm going to bring into this house, I'm going to put 20 to 30% away for that rainy day, but I'm going to spend the rest. And by the way, 80% of what you're making on an after-tax basis is a lot of money for a lot of people. I will tell you that the average American who makes fifty to $80,000 can accumulate up to $1 million plus in their lifetime if they have a dedicated savings program. That's how little you have to make to accumulate that much money. So it's all a matter of just as much effort we put into, working out, eating right, spiritually, right? Finance has to take that next step because there are what I call, Chris, capital invaders in our lives, right? We're all gun ho. We're all gun ho about making money, and spending money. Why? Because we're making money. So if we're making a lot of money, we can spend a lot of money. The problem is people don't realize that the journey up the cliff is not the same going down the cliff. Actually, if you walk up a mountain, right, or you hike up a mountain, you can see what's in front of you. When you're coming down a mountain, it's actually a little more dangerous because you're not looking down, you're looking ahead. So you can't see all the dangers in front of you. But people should be aware of these dangers. Are you going to be in the same tax bracket or higher? There's no guarantee. People think errantly that, in the future, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. No, you may not be, right? Inflation is not going to be a factor in my life. Well, guess what? We just had that right now, and people are suffering, right? And inflation is a stealth tax. Oh, I'm gonna spend all my money and leave nothing. And then all of a sudden, my children get married, they have a grandchild, and you know what? I really want to leave a legacy, but I didn't plan right. I get sick, and I have to spend money on long-term care, but I have to do Medicaid planning because my wife won't be able to live because I don't have enough money. So I call these, capital invaders because we never know in the future. We can't see these things today, right? Because everybody's economically confident because they can see up the mountain. The problem is they're not thinking about getting down the mountain. And life is much longer today. People are living much longer. I was just talking to someone whose mother, God bless, is 103 years old. That person has $40,000 left to their name, but you don't know how long you're going to live. So we know how long we might work. We just don't know how long that money has to last, so we don't outlast it. And the better job we do today of getting up the mountain to preserve some capital for that rainy day, the less stress you will have in the future.
One thing that I've learned of this last year and a half of transformation is, I lacked discipline in my life and really didn't have, intention, consistency, discipline, all the things that I talk that are so important. And what I want you to talk about is just like train for a marathon, and you have to be disciplined to follow a training plan. You have to set your intentions on getting up and doing your run. You have to be consistent with those runs to build up to be able to do that marathon. Talk about applying those principles to your financial planning, really being intentional with your finances, being consistent with your finances, and having that commitment to your finances. Because that's one thing I never had in my finances up until this point in life. I mean, yes, I put money away. I put money into into my company's provider 401k. They just came as a direct deposit, so I was doing something right, but I never was truly intentional. I was never truly disciplined or consistent with finances and budgeting and all that. So talk about how important that is into finances.
Yeah. So I think this is where, kind of we take a good road with our clients, and where, people really miss the boat. And I was talking about different professionals that are in my business who are looking to execute versus help. I think a well laid out plan, first of all, if you look at a baseball card, if you remember baseball cards, or if you go and look on Yahoo Sports and you look at stats for a player, right? They or you look at a baseball game, but it's all it's all stats today, right? Everything is based on algorithms and knowing the numbers, right? If you don't know where you're going, how do you get there, right? So having a plan that, first of all, understands who you are and what do you want to accomplish, then having line items of things that are there that you want to accomplish. And I'm sure you believe in this as well, Chris, because I think we talked about this, is you need a coach. You need a coach. I have a coach, right? I'm accountable. I have accountability. People ask me to be their coach, right? You need coaches in life, people who are not looking to, solve their bottom line, but assist you in that person's bottom line. And, regimenting yourself is no different than, an exercise routine. It's understanding that, like I said, having money come in and potentially, just like you said, you have a company 401k, right? It's automatic. You don't think about it. So there are ways today that you can set up a way to actually get paid, have your paycheck come into a checking account, know what your budget is, and then have the others go out, right? Have it go into, an investment account, have it go into your insurance account, have it go into whatever you have decided that this money goes. Once it leaves that account, after you've met your obligations, obviously, that money never comes back in. It's the never return bucket, right? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a little bucket out of that allocation that is for vacations, for, consuming things you want, because what is worth working hard if you can actually benefit yourself? So it today it's a balance. It's understanding that you have future commitments and adding to that bank, but understanding that you want to satisfy some demons upfront, right? So, and just like exercise, right? It's painful,
Yep.
right? People tell me that are, dollar cost averaging into accounts or doing certain things. Oh, Paul, it's so painful, of keeping up with this and driving towards those goals. But Chris, as you know, training for an Ironman, it's that extra effort, it's that extra mile, it's an extra pedal that gets you going. And they did a half marathon, half an Ironman by me out by the beach. And that day, I will tell you, it was in New York on Long Island. That day it
Jones
was
Beach.
cold. What? Jones Beach.
Jones Beach, yeah.
Yeah. Now I cycled down there, so I know. That day it was cold, it was raining, and it was super windy. Right. So I know people that actually trained for this, but actually couldn't get through the swim because the chop was that bad. So it's but the people that did get through it, because I know people that did get through it, including a person who actually had a flat tire in the middle of it, it's actually putting that work in to be prepared to get over the unknown.
Last thing I want to ask you is, now that your son is coming to this business, and as you said, he's probably got a lot longer uh, runway in this than you do now. So looking back, what piece of advice would you give him about, running this business and taking this business in the future with, what's yet to come in the world. But also, the second part of the question is kind of what legacy are you hoping to leave on Clearview Financial and for your son?
Wow. You want me to cry? Uh, I guess the one thing that I would tell my son that was something that was missing for me was to not be concerned about taking calculated risk and to just free yourself to do what you need to do and not have any regrets. Chris, I know you've made a lot of decisions in your business recently, and it's going to pay off for you. I have no regrets in my business, but the one regret I do have is that I didn't make some critical moves that I felt could have put me even further than where I am today. And where I am is in a good place. But, if I was looking at anything, I would tell my son to not have limits, to keep going, to push the envelope, because knowing what I know and who I am, it's a multiplying effect, right? What do I want to leave my firm is a very emotional thing. Thinking about the end of my career is emotional, and I would say that, and I said this a couple of times, that I am a love-based leader. If I retain a client, they're part of my family, right? I feel really good about it, and we both know a mutual party together. And I was told when I met this person that I treated them like an equal, and I built a relationship to feel like a family and treated like a family member, right? And I guess the legacy that I want to leave my firm is that I was a real person, that I was a great leader, mentor, and that I really was true to my word, and I was really, really that love-based person, and people felt good about working with me.
Awesome. Well, I know that to be true about you, Paul, from having the opportunity to talk to you and get to really to know you, that you truly do care. And so it's an amazing thing. I want to thank you for your time and appearing on First Light and giving us your words of wisdom as it relates to your career and the security and financial security that people are looking for.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing your journey and insights with us today. Your commitment to clarity, integrity, and client-focused solution is truly inspiring. To everyone tuning in, remember to keep shining your light.